Hey guys, what's up? I'm CJ and welcome back to my galaxy. Today I am finally back with a Hunger Games video. Today we're debunking some of your Hunger Games theories. Now, if you don't know already, I have a forum, like a Google forum that you guys are able to send in your theories, and I'm going to be able to debunk them in a video for my Debunking the Hunger Games Theories series, which is a bit of a rhyme, but point is, if you go into the link in my description, you guys are able to submit your own theories for debunking if you'd like to. I also get some theories from the comment section sometimes. I don't always do debunking videos on my subscribers' theories, but when I do, I think it'd be really cool to actually get subscriber theories that you guys sent in, which is why I set up the forum. So if you want to send them in, go ahead and do that. Now today I have 4 different theories from 3 different people, I believe, and I'm going to be talking about those today. Theory number 1, the merchant class in different districts are descended from families who sided with the capital in the dark days. Now I'm going to read out the entirety of the theory as well, and I'm going to let you know who wrote this in. Now Reese wrote this one in. They don't have like an online handle, but their online name is Reese. I have a theory that the merchant class in District 12 or equivalent in the other districts are descended from families who sided with the capital in the dark days. They were given the houses and businesses as rewards after the capital won the war, whilst the poorer, more rebellious populations suffered and became more downtrodden as the lower seen class. Now I kind of agree with this one, because we do actually have evidence in the prequel about this, something along the lines kind of similar happening in Songbirds and Snakes, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But I want to talk about the divide, the class divide in the districts, and how we know or understand that there's a class divide via like a biased narrator from Katniss. We don't know for sure that there is a class divide in other districts, but we can, assume that there is something similar going on, because what the capital does in the Hunger Games or in Panem in general, and this is something that happens in real life, and Suzanne Collins making a comment on it, as they kind of like the more powerful people who are trying to, they want to keep their power like the capital does, right? They cause kind of like infighting with the people who are trying to rebel, trying to break away from the oppression, as Panem does in the district. So we can only assume that there is likely class divides within the people, so there's infighting more in the individual districts. And what we see as evidence of that class divide in District 12 is the merchant class versus the seam. Peter is from the merchant class and Katniss is from the seam. Haymitch also is from the seam, and we don't have the book, and when I'm recording this and when I'm uploading this, we don't have Sunrise on the Reaping, published yet. But we do know from what we've gotten from like a little bit of a synopsis is that Haymitch is kind of thinking of Maisie Donna. Yeah, I had to like remember her name for a second. Maisie Donna is this like snobbish, I don't remember the exact words they used, but she's kind of like a press. She's kind of snobbish because she's the mayor's daughter, and he thinks of her differently because she's merchant class. That also happens with Madge Undersea, who's once again the mayor's daughter. Later on, Maisie Donna's sister is her mother, her twin sister is her mother, and they're like distantly related. If you've read the books, you understand the relation there. And Gale doesn't like Madge because of that class divide. Katniss really struggles to have relationships because of that class divide with the merchant class, like Peter and Madge. But surprisingly, she actually has her best relationships in the books are actually via that class divide. But the thing that we actually end up finding out later during the first book is that Peter and other merchant class people aren't as well off as the capital people were, as the capital people, but their survival wasn't much better than people from, say, the seam. They just were surviving in a different way that Katniss she desired before she found out the reality of Peter's situation, right? We know that in the cave scene in the first games, in the 74th games, that Peter relays his life to Katniss in some way, shape or form. They share bits of stories from their life in District 12. And Peter says that he doesn't eat any of the fresh baked goods from the bakery that he works at, that his family owns, that he actually eats like the stale bread from the bakery. And Katniss mentions in her inner monologue that is it really you know, thriving. Like, it's not a life, you're simply surviving. There's no thriving there, at least. And she says this as well, at least if, you know, she doesn't, some days they might go a little bit hungry or they're starving, what have you, right? At least sometimes when they have, you know, fresh meat, you're actually afraid it'll run away and it's not stale. It's actually good meat for you. It's good, it's healthy, and it's, you know, it's good for them. And there is just different ways of survival in the districts. Because of this, I don't necessarily think that the capital has rewarded people of the districts who helped them during the dark days. They're definitely not capital people, but I don't think the merchant class is necessarily people who were better off. They were just simply people who, you know, were in the right place at the right time. However, I do think something like this probably did happen in bits and pieces, not in like a full-scale level, creating a class divide. This was something to divide the districts so it was easier to oppress them. So we see that Sejanus in the prequel, Songbirds and Snakes, that he is actually from District 2, that his father bought their way into the capital. So in some scale, that there were district people who did largely help the capital and were rewarded for that. Now, I don't think that it was, like I said, it wasn't like mass amounts of people, like a whole merchant class. It was probably select few. You know, Sejanus, I believe, from what we're told, you know, biased narrative and everything, but from Snow's perspective, Sejanus was very likely the Plinth family was very likely the only family from the districts in the capital. So if that's possible to bring someone from the districts into the capital, was it possible that they rewarded some people who possibly owned businesses, who like owned, you know, their businesses helped the capital in some way where they're rewarded for that? You know, quite possibly, but at the same time, I can see the capital kind of punishing them to make sure that they, you know, like spinning the narrative, using propaganda, saying, no, you didn't actually help us, you know, you further hindered us and this is why you're being punished. Kind of say to the districts, you can't go near us, you can't touch us, that sort of thing. And the only reason I say that is because if the Plinth family was moved from the districts, then why wasn't anyone else moved? So in some regard, you know, maybe the capital rewarded the families that helped them in the districts by making them mayors, you know. They meant that they were in positions of power, but not really. Theory number 2, the original victors from before the 10th Hunger Games were brought back. This is kind of a long-winded theory, so what I'm going to say first is that there are 2 theories from this person, and they're Baconfish969 on YouTube, and you'll probably see them in my comment section a little bit as well, because I have seen this person in my comment section. So Baconfish, what's up? How are you going? Thank you for sending in these 2 theories. The original victors are brought back. Sometime soon after the 10th Hunger Games, maybe even as soon as the 11th, Snow/Gaul decide to bring back previous victors, not as mentors necessarily, just as like celebrities. They provide supplementary content during the games, broadcast when the things get slow, like with the student mentors for the 10th. Not all the victors for 1st to 9th would still be alive or be able to be found. But I can't imagine that in an effort to promote the games going forward, Snow/Gaul wouldn't consider the remaining original victors as something worth using for their cause. Especially the first victor would have to be a celebrity at least by the time the games get really big. I'm pretty sure that it said or implied that most victors go back to the capital for every games, and I think that would have started quite early. There would probably have to be significant bribery for the victors to cooperate, but offering proper victor rewards like newer victors would sway at least a few of them to behave and put on a good show. So they definitely brought back victors from, this is mentioned kind of in the books, not really in the movies, that they brought back victors, you know, between games, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But I don't doubt that the first Hunger Games to the 9th Hunger Games, they would have bribed in some way the victors to come back, because, you know, you have to go back and give all these victors rewards to kind of make sure they don't hate the capital enough to rebel if they're at these positions of power. So they need to make sure that they're not hurting the capital's power in any way. Or they just said that simply they disappeared, like Lucy Gray. I assume they had to have come up with an excuse for the 10th Hunger Games as well. So it's possible that they didn't bring them back, but I would say it's likely that they did bring back a few of them at the very least. Now, we can see that the victors were brought back annually for the games in several points of the books, but I think the things that really come up the most are the relationships the victors build with one another. So we see that through Finnick and Joanna, Finnick and Haymitch and Plutarch as well, very important one. They have to come back as mentors, first of all. So the most recent winner from that district will have come back for mentoring, but the question lies between, like, did everyone come back or is it just the one mentor? I would say it was everyone. Not only does Haymitch have relationships with some of the younger victors or the victors that are around like his age as well, he has relationships with like literally everyone, and there's more evidence to support that as well. Not to say like there's victors who came later, so Haymitch knows like a lot of people, but you know, he has a very strong relationship with, I don't remember his name, I've completely forgotten it, but he is a victor from District 11, and he is the male tribute that goes in during the Quarter Quell, the 75th Hunger Games. That guy who basically kisses Katniss on the mouth, which is gross, by the way. Completely disagree with that one, but he does that, and they're like besties. So they definitely interact, and they even have time to be able to interact with one another between the like games festivities. I think the biggest indicator though that this is something that happened while Snow was coming up during his like time as a game maker, his time as an intern for the games, as like underneath Dr. Gall, you know, as he's creating his own little things like rewards for the victors, trying to make it a show rather than just like a bloodbath, what is it called, like a fight to the death, you know. Instead of that, he's making it into a performance. There's one extra thing that he added into this games that isn't in the movies. It's not depicted in the movies at all, but it is insane and definitely should have been in the movies. It's one of the biggest things that I'm like, this is an indicator of trauma. Peter is a big part of this as well, so we're gonna get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself, okay? Ready? So each victor actually has to choose kind of like a hobby, something that they show to the capital every year. So there are updates every single year, and Katniss even gets very overwhelmed by this, saying that she's going to have updates on her life every single year to the capital, and she won't be able to hide from any of these people moving forward. So they're trying to find Katniss like this hobby to do, to be able to show updates to the capital, and it's said that all the victors do this. It's because the capital is very interested in their victors, that they want to know about their lives, and they want to have this like interpersonal, very parasocial relationship with the victors. The thing that Peter chooses obviously is painting. Now, Katniss at some point, they're traveling with a bunch of paintings that they're going to be showing the capital for, you know, I think it's the Victory Tour, and so that it's on the train, and Katniss and Peter go and have a look at his paintings, and the paintings are of literally every trauma Peter has ever experienced, and that's how he's channeled his trauma, and why it's not being brought out in the same way that Katniss is having like mental breakdown after mental breakdown. Like Peter has an outlet of painting, and that's how he expresses himself. So there's a lot of stuff about the arena in his paintings, and a lot of scenes of how he saw Katniss. It's one of the reasons why I highly recommend reading the books, is because you get little details about that, like how Peter like really survived through his trauma. Just from my own personal opinion and being able to read this theory, I definitely agree with it, that it had to have been, you know, very early on that they implemented this and brought back old victors, so you'd be able to have, or like it has Snow written all over it, you know. It's something that he was like, this is kind of like how we get them to participate, is that we give them some sort of outlet to, you know, express themselves in like a hobby or an interest that they want to have, and then we get to benefit from that as the capital, and we get to show them that, you know, we get to show the districts that the victors get all of these things, that they have time and spare time to be able to do whatever they want now. It is 100% something he would have worked on as a little project after he was done with figuring out the kinks with the betting system that we saw like in both the prequel and later in the 74th Hunger Games. I don't know how to describe it to you, so I really hope you understand, but it is definitely something that I see and I'm like, that has Snow's whole just demeanor written all over it. That is something that President Snow came up with. So this theory I definitely 100% agree on. It's the victors were brought back for some reason, and eventually that developed over time, and there was reasons for them to come back, one of which I feel like is probably the hobbies and the interests, and that's how they bribed them, is that give them the money, say you can do this with your life and yada yada yada, you know, you can come back and just as long, you can do whatever you want, just as long as you come back and show us what you've been up to. Theory number 3, District 4 is less of a career district than Districts 1 or 2. This theory is also from Bacon Fish, so I'm going to read out the whole thing as well. It's also very long-winded. Very much appreciate the description, so I have a lot more to talk about, but you know, this is a long one, so you guys, let's sit back and listen for this. I think Districts 1 and 2 were training their tributes to some extent by the 25th Games, those tributes tending to ally in the arena. Those districts are subsequently have the largest number of victors. District 4, though, has a more average number of victors and only began regularly joining the career pack closer to the 50th Hunger Games. Maybe even after, and up to the 74th still aren't necessarily always among the strongest tributes in the arena. Given the fact that the District 4 boy for the 75th went into the games so young, I assume that means that there wasn't a particularly strong career-minded older boy to volunteer for him. Plus, Finnick went in at 14, so the whole picture seems to point to a situation where they are capable older teens to volunteer only sometimes, and other times no one is up for it. This is another theory that I feel like I agree with to some extent, but not all the way. That's because I see this one actually quite often in the fandom, and I agree more with something like a theory that leans more to like in a different direction, less more like there isn't anyone capable, more that it is on purpose that they're sending only one stronger victor, one stronger tribute. Sometimes I mess up my words, guys, okay? Leave me alone. So when it comes to Districts 1 and 2, we're seeing a case where they're likely a lot bigger of a district. They discuss that district sizes are very varying, that District 11 is actually the district with the largest population. So I'm assuming that the way that they are either training the District 1 and 2 people within their districts, or it's the way that their population is that they're able to bring up more like 2 victors, 2 volunteers for tributes that are more likely to be victors, so they're giving themselves like 2 chances in a pool of 24 tributes. It might very possibly just be the culture that they're sending in 2 people, but the thing is that I see in the fandom a lot is that District 4 sends in 1 tribute that is more like a someone who's volunteered, and that they're sending in someone who was just picked from the bowl at the reaping. And that's how Finnick at 14 ended up in there. That's how the younger kids from, I don't know if it's District 3. District 3 had someone really weak and young. And then there's someone that in the movies, I don't know how he dies in the books. I don't remember if it's the same or what, but Kato is seen to kill him in the bloodbath, the little District 4 boy. So that's how they likely got reaped, was that they weren't a part of the volunteer process in that specific year. They were actually a part of just the regular reaping part of the Hunger Games. I do think that the thing that the fandom says is that for whatever reason District 1 and 2 has the capabilities or interest / culture of sending 2 people in as tributes as volunteers, and District 4 has just developed into sending 1 person in to give them just the 1 shot. Whether or not they find it, maybe they just find it more worth it just sending in the 1 person who's volunteered and expecting them to win and not expecting like a Finnick O'Dare to win instead. So I definitely agree that District 4 is less of a career district, but I think it's to do with more like cultural shifts or whatever. Like District 4 likely has different values to Districts 1 and 2. Districts 1 and 2 also depicted as being a lot closer, especially District 2, being a lot closer with the capital than say like District 4 is. And to add to that, there's a lot of speculation that District 4 was kept close to the capital in the way that there's like career tributes in the books. In the movies, District 4 isn't really shown to be a career district, but in the books they definitely are. And it's also explicitly stated. It's just not explicitly stated by Haymitch and Katniss in the first Hunger Games movies. But the reason District 4 is kept so close to the capital is because they're right next to the ocean, and that's a very easy escape for the people who live in District 4. So in order to keep them within the bounds of District 4, they allow them some luxuries that the other districts aren't allowed to have. Meaning District 4 is almost there for career tributes, almost there for being close to their own oppressors, but not quite where Districts 1 and 2 are. Theory number 4. The capital was heavily dependent on coal after Dark Days War. This theory comes from Kate Tickner 7141, and I'm going to read out the whole thing. The capital was heavily dependent on coal after the Dark Days War. They used it to power their trains and their industry. District 12 was one of the most economically important districts and had a large population to meet that demand. After Haymitch wins the 50th Games, Snow not only kills everyone he loves, but also starts transitioning Panam's economy away from coal as a power source, reducing demand and leading to a slow mass starvation, and 12 becoming the small, impoverished district we see by the 74th. Evidence the deployment of more peacekeepers to 12 to keep up production in Ballad. Katniss regularly finding the bodies of people who have starved, the small size of the district in 74th Hunger Games versus in the 10th Hunger Games when they can afford entertainers, and Snow has to hike all over looking for Lucy's house. Now I think this one I might actually disagree with, because when we look at it's kind of confusing actually when we look at the whole thing and we're trying to figure out whether or not the capital and Panam as a whole is actually dependent on coal as an export or an export and import, you know, just a main source for their power. Because if we look at it, especially in the movies really give us a good idea of what the world looks like, is that, you know, everything in the capital goes out of power when the water source stops. And I cannot remember what district it's from, because in my mind it's District 4, but whoever does the water, whoever collapses the dam, I think could have been District 8? I don't know, correct me in the comments. Remind me, in the movies when they're singing to the hanging tree and they collapse the dam, in my mind it's always District 4 because of the water, but it's not. And it's like District 8 or something. It can't be District 8. It's always one that I don't expect. And I'm gonna need someone to remind me. But they collapse the water source, the water dam, and they completely cut off the capital from all its power, indicating to us that the coal isn't their main power source, which is actually very interesting. I've seen so many people in the fandom talk about this exact theory, is that whenabouts did coal not become something that they were dependent on in the capital? And some people do say, like, maybe Lucy Gray was, and when Snow came into power, that was when he started, you know, making District 12 really impoverished. But the thing is, that it would have been really easy to do, because after the Dark Days, every single district was really incredibly impoverished. They were really weak as well. Straight after the war, they have no resources because the capital stripped them of everything. So it would have been really easy to just deny District 12 all of that immediately after District 12. It would have been a lot more difficult after Haymitch to just strip them back of all of their benefits in some way. And there's really no reason for them to have had anything between the 10th and the 74th Hunger Games. But I also hear a lot of people talking about the fact that even Katniss mentions that Panam exists because of climate change and disastrous, you know, just it's very disastrous, essentially what I've always assumed as kind of apocalyptic events that recreated this entire new empire of Panam. And I do refer to it as, you know, an empire, because that's literally what I think, and I know a lot of people think that Suzanne Collins was going for, because she was going for the literal definition of Panam is bread and circuses. In both the book and the movie, Katniss talks about, or the Dark Days footage in the movie and Katniss's inner monologue in the books, talk about how before the Dark Days there was a lot of famine, there was war, there was lots of like flooding, fires, whatever, climate disasters, like natural disasters that happened to create Panam, and to essentially there was the sea levels rise as well, which is like a really good indicator to me that it's about climate change, obviously, because that's what we're seeing right now. But it's essentially saying that Panam was created because North America sank, right? And it's Canada, the United States, and bits of Mexico as well that created Pan Am as we know it in the books. So there's a bunch of natural disasters that were created, and the fandom in its infinite wisdom essentially says, and I also believe this, I'm a big believer of this, that they switched to renewables in order to basically regain and build back up after these like mass extinction events, because they were essentially forced to go into renewables and move away from things like coal, which is like really interesting as to why there's an entire district dedicated to coal, because at the end of the day we don't entirely know or understand why. There's only really good guesses that we can make. Like I said, we can make guesses that maybe that they stripped back the usage of coal after Lucy Gray in order to keep them in this very impoverished state post the Dark Days. Or we can assume that they needed coal for some things, but not everything, and that's why they stayed in such bad levels and in extreme poverty in District 12, is because they didn't actually need coal. So, and they just needed an excuse to oppress them, which is probably what Snow kept, and then they didn't change that their imports from District 12 in any way, when they very well could have. I was gonna say that they didn't do anything specific as an export at that point in time, but we don't actually get that perspective from the Covey. I wonder if they did do that, if mining was a big thing, because I don't remember reading that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember reading about coal being a big thing in District 12 at that point. I feel like everyone kind of just was doing whatever made them money, but that could just be Lucy Gray's and the Covey's experience. No, in the movies, I feel like maybe they do walk past the mine. I don't know. I have no idea. I cannot remember. I watched that movie twice and read the book once, unfortunately. So I have 3 references and I need to remember what happened. So remind me in the comments. But either way, when it comes to this theory, there's a lot of speculation and we don't know for sure, but this is another thing. Like to some extent, I agree that Snow was very, he was purposely trying to keep District 12 in poverty, in extreme poverty, probably because of Lucy Gray. You know, I said I disagree with it because I do, but I also don't. I've been saying that a lot for the theories today, but I disagree with it. But in some way, yes, it's also, there's a reason why District 12 and their export didn't change, despite the fact that they don't really use coal in the capital or in any of the districts. Whenever I think about this theory, I'm just like, it's so interesting that District 12, you know, they were in extreme poverty and the capital didn't really use they didn't use coal to power their whole city. And the districts don't get proper power at every point in the day because they chalk it up to extreme poverty, and the capital not allowing them the power, they're just sucking away all the electricity and whatever from the coal. And the signs were kind of there that the reason District 12 is the worst and the worst off is because they don't need coal. They've been using renewables since the history of, since Pan Am started. It's right there in front of us, and yet we don't actually know for sure, and it drives me, this is one of the things that actually drives me insane. So this commenter, thank you, what was it, Kate? Thank you for bringing this up, but I'm gonna go crazy thinking about it now. So, thank you, ? But anyways, guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you everyone who sent in theories for today's video. I greatly appreciate it. And if you want to make it into another video, go into my description down below and you'll be able to see my Google Forms that is still currently open, and you can add any of your theories into there if you would like to. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe and comment down below any of your theories. What did you think of today's theories? Do you agree with them? Do you disagree with them? Do you want to add your own take to it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, but I've been CJ and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.